Ladies and gentlemen, time is ticking. First up to come and share is a Brixtonian, Jamaican-born actress. Best known for her roles in soap operas playing Pearl McHugh in Channel 5's Family Affairs. Vera Corrigan in Doctors and Emerald Fox in EastEnders. Both on the BBC, by the way, which is rare. She also played a regular role of nurse Adelaide Beckford in series 8 of Casualty. I warn you now, do not look in her eyes for too long. She has some sparkly thing going on that will mesmerize you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome British Caribbean actor Dona Croll!
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. What an introduction. I had to write a speech. So, Deputy Mayor, I have to name him first because he's the most important person in the room. Deputy Mayor, honoured guests, trade unionists, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. My name is Dona Croll. I'm a storyteller. I am, yes. And I'm really delighted to have been invited to come and address you. I hear that Rudolph Walker was here last year. Well, now that's some big shoes I got to fill. I take a 4.5. I think he takes about a 10, but you know, we will do our best. I think I might need my glasses. I'm not as young as I used to be. I've been a performer for 47 years.
Woo!
Yes, I know. And I'm still not famous. But hey, it's okay. But you know, being able to speak, having the words, having the story is so important. Can you imagine a world without story? Just think of that 1 minute. You can't tell a joke, the story about truth and lie. That is a story, that's a narrative. And it is a basic human instinct. Sometimes I think when they say, oh, we found a painting in a cave, and it's the earliest form of art. And I think, no, the earliest form of art is sitting around the fire, telling stories. It's a basic human need, and that's what I do. And I'm blessed and honored to be able to do it. Yeah, I'm from Jamaica. I never had anyone who looked like me. Oh, thank you so much. I've only got 2 hands. It is a failing of mine. Yeah, I never had anyone who looked like me who came into my school. And I never had any teachers who looked like me. But I did have progressive teachers. Thank the Lord for teachers. They can change your life. And my parents came from rural Jamaica, like so many other people at the time. And we settled in Birmingham. A lot of Western Jamaica lived in Birmingham, Wolverhampton. I don't know why. But my parents, answering the call of the British government, which invited us here, came to find a better life for their 2 daughters, myself and my younger sister. So yeah, I'm a Brummy, but what? Nobody ever wants that accent, so I never tell anybody, so let's just keep that between ourselves, all right? So I grew up in Birmingham. Life is quite similar to other immigrant families. You know, we've got a whole shared history. There's now a whole art movement around early Caribbean life. The West Indian Front Room, how many people have seen that exhibition? You know, the profusion of colour, the glass fish, the cabinet with the unused but treasured bits and pieces. My mother brought all her bits and pieces from Jamaica and then went back with them, you know, never used them, but hey, that's life. And of course, the forced attendance of Sunday school and church. Both my parents are born-again Christians. My mother is a retired reverend, and my late father was a pastor, and they founded their own church in Birmingham. That's quite an achievement in the early 60s, but you know what they say. Past a picnic always bad, and here's the living proof. So I go to infant school, I go to junior school, and at a time when education was high up on the government's agenda, I started learning French when I was 7. I mean, who does that now except maybe Eton and Harrow, but 7. And there were lots of activities, swimming club, Scottish dancing, savings club, and I got on with everything. I did very well. Passed my 11 plus, went to a grammar school, an all-girls school, and our headmistress, Miss Tulloch, tiny little Scottish woman, remarkable woman. She modernized our curriculum, and I realize in hindsight she was the first feminist I ever encountered. But still, I love French. I went on to study German and Italian, and in the summer holidays, the library was my sanctuary. I'd go and I'd read, and I'd read, and I'd read. By the time I was about 12, I'd done the whole of Dickens, I'd done the whole of the children's section, I took books home in the evening to read. Next day I went back, read all day, went home, read all night, and you might be thinking, oh, what a nice, diligent child, how good she was. But there's another motive. We all had chores to do in the summer holidays, and my mother, if she saw me reading a book, that always took precedence over the chores. So I was excused the chores and I could read a book. Hey, praise the Lord. Now, at school, at grammar school, I was that girl who was the clown class, the class of the clown. I could imitate all the teachers, I could sing, I could dance, and the teachers found out about it, and most of them forgave me, except Miss Klein. There's always one, isn't there? Christine Klein was sort of doubled up, and she had a lisp, and she had very short nails because she bit them, but she had one nail that she didn't bite, and she would point at you with that nail. One day she was late for class, so I was at the front of the class taking the class as Miss Klein, and she walked in. Whoa, what a thing. They threw me out, so that was English language. They threw me out of English language. That was all of her. She didn't like me. She didn't like me. And then she gave us homework once, a poem, and I wrote this poem, and she accused me of plagiarism. Now, a lot of us have that experience, going to school where the teacher, Diane Abbott has a story of, the teacher saying, where did you copy this from, Diane Abbott? Well, I had that with Christine Klein. Where did you copy that poem from? If only she knew there were no books at home for me to copy anything from, except, the Bible as history or the Encyclopedia Britannica. Anyway, my first acting break came when I was about 15 or 16. We did a production of Midsummer Night's Dream. All-girls school. I'm playing Bottom. Do any of you know the play? Yeah. Well, I'm playing Bottom. Miss Tulloch announced that my bottom was the best bottom she'd ever seen. And then I started writing little sketches and doing things on stage at school. And my teacher said, you really should try and go to drama school and be an actor. Well, I had no idea what an actor was because we didn't see us on television. Occasionally you'd see an American singer or, Satchmo or whoever. And I'd never been to a theatre. It wasn't part of my cyclorama. It just wasn't in my experience. So I didn't know what they were talking about. But they really insisted and said, just give it a go, Donna, just give it a go. My parents were not best pleased. My mother was convinced that I would end up naked on television, which I did. But but many years later, there was also the disappointment that I wasn't going to be a teacher, a doctor, or a lawyer, or whatever. But my reasoning went that acting made me happy. I enjoyed performing. I enjoyed stepping into other people's shoes. And I knew I didn't want to do a 9-to-5 routine job. I tried that in my gap year. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back and do my languages. So I applied to Birmingham Theatre School. I auditioned and I got in, and there were no student fees in those days. You could study for free. Thank you, Tony Blair. I didn't even try any of the London drama schools because I had a boyfriend and I wouldn't leave him. And of course, as soon as I started work, guess what? He left me, yeah. Thank you for your vote of confidence there. While I was at drama school, I propositioned one of the local DJs. This is how fast, fiercely, ambitious, and driven I am. I propositioned a local DJ. He had a program on BBC Radio Birmingham called Reggae. But these were DJs, but they weren't very good at reading out people's requests, their shout-outs, their letters. I said, why don't I do that for you? Or why don't I do that for you? And they let me loose on the BBC. Well, it was great because I had a BBC card which allowed me free entry to all the Birmingham nightclubs. Yes! Yes, there's always a perk, isn't there? Well, 3 years of study later, and I left drama school, and my first job was at the Bush Theatre in Shepherd's Bush in a play called Gin Trap. That theatre now is run by a young woman of colour called Lynette Linton. How things have changed since the 70s, because that just didn't happen for the first 20 years of my career. But from Gin Trap, I got other engagements, and that same year, I booked my first TV job. And suddenly, my mother understood. My daughter is on the television. And it was all okay, it was great. It was a series called Gangsters, and it was based in Birmingham at Pebble Mill. Well, I continued working. This is basically what I've done all my life. I've just got the next job, took the next job. But there happened to be better and better jobs. So I was in Manchester, Liverpool, York, Nottingham, Leicester. Honestly, if there's a town with a theatre in it, I've probably played there. I worked in London with a Black Theatre company, Black Theatre Co-op, Tember, Tallower. So along with the theatre and the few crumbs that fell from the television table, I managed to make a living while honing my craft. There's a lot of craft with being on stage, how to stand, how to breathe, how to speak. So, and it's not something you can learn in 3 years at drama school. You learn it as you're working with people. And my first West End job was in a play called Serious Money in the West End, which didn't pay serious money, but it was called Serious Money. I'd made it to the West End, the top of the profession. And I continued to work with other companies. I played Miss Brandon in Smile Orange, and that was great because Trevor Rohn came from Jamaica, the writer. He also wrote The Harder They Come, but he came from Jamaica to direct it, and that was wonderful. And then I played Cleopatra in Antony and Cleopatra, and suddenly the newspapers were all over me. Ah, you're Britain's first Black Cleopatra. Well, you know, you get a lot of this, you're the first to do this, you're the first black to do this. We're just reinventing the wheel all the time. I ignored it, but when my answer was that I'm Britain's first Black Cleopatra that you know of, because our history is so degraded, ignored in this country. I mean, this is why we have Black History Month, that we don't know whether there was another Cleopatra. So I'm not getting involved in the media storm. I never really understood it, but I insisted that I wasn't the first Black Cleopatra. The time now had come for me to focus on television and film. Things were changing slowly on TV. I got a nice part in Desmond's. Now that was great, actually, to work with Norman Beaton and Carmen Munro. And Rudolph wasn't in it, but I've worked with Rudolph a couple of times. I've played his wife and his girlfriend in things. But I regarded these actors as the real trailblazers. They were here in the 50s battling and the 60s when I was just running around, you know, being silly at school. And it was wonderful to work with them, and I was happy to follow in their footsteps. I got a big break in a 1990 film called Hallelujah Anyhow, written by a poet called Jean Binter-Breeze. Anybody know Jean Binter-Breeze? Yeah, thank you. She's not with us anymore, but she'd written this film for the BBC. It was BBC and British Film Institute. And I got the part of the pastor in this church. And I'd seen Jean before, I'd met her, but we just said hi and we didn't really know each other. But when you're filming, you spend a lot of time waiting for the lights, waiting for this, waiting for that. It's always wait, and then hurry up. But anyhow, we were waiting, and she said, Dona, where you come from? I said, oh, Jean, you would never have heard of it. It's a tiny little place in Hanover called Patty Hill. And Jean said, but X amount of clot. And that's where me come from too. I'm like, what? There's two girls from Patty Hill sitting on a film set. One has written the piece, and one is playing the lead role in the play. How did that happen? We looked at each other, we couldn't believe it. And then we found out through asking family and going back and asking great aunts and things that my maternal grandfather and her maternal grandfather were like cousins. So suddenly, I'm with some cousin from Patty Hill on a film set. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. It's amazing. The film was shown on the BBC like 8 months later when they'd all edited and cut it together. And the day after it was shown, I had black women stopping me in the street and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I said, oh, well, thank you, very nice to meet you. They said it was so nice to see a black couple being intimate. That's when I took my clothes off. It was that scene, it was that scene. And I hadn't thought of it before, but she said, we always see mixed race couples in bed. We never see black people in bed. And it went, cling! It's true, I hadn't ever thought of it. But these black women were hugging me on Waterloo Bridge and thanking me for that. And I thought, wow, that is something, that's important. Anyhow, the day after it was shown, I was getting on my local Victoria line going south to Brixton, and I got on the platform, and the train driver put his head out the window and said, wait! I know you were about to miss it by the TV last night. Well, I thought, shall I answer? No, it's not worth it, really. So I just got on the train and went home. The film was a huge success. BAFTA flew me to LA for the Santa Barbara Film Festival. These things happen to actors. I don't know how it happens, but I found myself in John Travolta's house, sitting on a settee at this party, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I don't know anybody, and I borrowed this dress, and I hope I look all right, and don't cry, Donna, you're in the right place. Look good. And the settee went like that next to me, and I looked, and it was Robert Mitchum. And so, remember Robert Mitchum? Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, it's Robert Mitchum. So, don't cry, don't be silly, don't be tongue-tied, just have a nice conversation with Robert Mitchum. And we did, and he was telling me the best ganja he'd ever smoked was in Jamaica. Oh man, what a life. So then following year now, that's when I got Casualty. And I will take this, I was the first black woman to play a female nurse on Casualty. Because they'd always had a male nurse. George Harris, who did it after him, Eddie Nestor, Patterson Joseph. When I got there, it was Patrick Robinson. And we were worried that Patrick was going to get the sack because there's only ever one of us in the show. But they had two, and then I thought, why? When you consider the contributions that black women have made to the NHS, and it took the BBC 8 years to have a black woman on their show. I mean, I thought, yeah, Thank you, BBC, but really, about time. My character's name was Adele Beckford. They'd chosen the Adele, and they said to me, what would her surname be? And I chose Beckford because it's a good Jamaican name. And it's a good Jamaican name, as it's Black History Month, I'll tell you this. I was giving a prize at the Theatre Awards in the London Guildhall, and there's a great big statue of Beckford, who had been the mayor of London. And it's a good Jamaican name because he owned lots of goods and chattel in Jamaica at the time. My next big TV job was Pearl McHugh in Family Affairs. Again, I joined the McHugh family. Producer said, what would her name be? I said Pearl, because my mother's name is Pearl. So I got my mother on the TV. And then when I left Family Affairs, I went back to the theatre, and I was doing Elmina's Kitchen with Kwame Kweyama. Does anybody know Kwame? He wrote me the part of Anastasia in Elmina's Kitchen. How blessed am I to have a part written specially for me by one of our leading playwrights. And I did that, and then back to work after Family Affairs, because Family Affairs really was hard work. There's a lot of politics in British soap that we don't notice, but I noticed it. My character's set was always sort of grubby, not very clean, and one day I counted 14 bottles of hot pepper sauce. Because the designers, none of them black, think that is how black people live. Well, one day Donna said, why is my set always dirtier than everybody else's? Do you think that black people don't know how to keep a house clean? When we were cleaning your houses, they were clean. You see, you can't say things like that in those workspaces. You get into trouble. So I got into trouble for that. I got into trouble when there's a young girl playing a doctor. She came into my shop, and I said, it wasn't in the script. I said, morning, doctor, what can I do you for? The producer came down to me to tell me, don't call her doctor. I said, why not? He said, it doesn't sound right. So I said to Layla, you know, if you were a white man, it would be scripted that I call you doctor. She said, yeah, I know. So we just deal with it. But this stuff goes out into people's homes. And for me, television is deeply political, and there are certain things that I don't allow my daughter to watch. But hey, yeah, back to me. So I did all of that, more television, Doctor Who, Silent Witness, Holby City, Ice Cream Girls, the Sally Lockhart Mysteries, West of Liberty, Death in Paradise, The Long Song, Andrea Levy's show, her story set in... Do you want me to wind up? Yes? Okay. So, let me say this. Well, he's got a prettier frock than me, so let him. So let him on. Okay, let me just say this in closing. I did a film a few years ago called Mr. Malcolm's List, and it was on the BBC last Sunday, so it's on iPlayer. So please get the ratings up. It's called Mr. Malcolm's List. It's with Chopé Dirisu, Frida Pinto, Zawe Ashton, and myself. Please watch it. My most recent theatre was in the West End, in Doctors, and a production of Richard II, which we did at the Globe Theatre with Adjua. Adjua plays Lady Something in Bridgerton. Yeah. Anyhow, because I don't watch much television. But we did that, and I will say in closing that over the years, I've seen a lot of changes in this industry, but none so quick as the way British television and theatre has reacted since the Black Lives Matter movement and the death of George Floyd. The West End used to be a closed shop. When I was in the West End the first time in '86, I was the only black woman in the West End who wasn't singing and dancing. So that's changed. Now when you go past, every cast in the West End has at least one actor of colour, if not two. Excuse me. And television and film has created stars of people like Lashana Lynch, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, Idris Elba and Sharon D. Clarke. Sharon will shortly be appearing as Lady Bracknell in The Importance of Being Earnest at the National Theatre. We put it on in the 90s, and Mona Hammond's playing that part, but it wasn't at the National Theatre. And also Sharon is going to be playing the lead in her own detective TV show. I'm really proud to have been part of this artists' movement in Britain. Telling stories is one of the most important things, as I said, in human life. And our stories are now just being allowed to emerge. They've always been regarded as unimportant and not pertinent to the domestic market, not pertinent to the domestic audience. But we, the story makers in this country, are beginning to recognize our global appeal. So being pertinent to the domestic market is niche. We are global, and I'm really happy and honored to have been part of that movement. Thank you very much.
What an honor. I know you don't feel like you were around the campfire as well, right? Cheese and bread.